Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited you're here on the call.
Delighted to be. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I'm going to introduce you to everyone. This is the Conscious Visionary Nurse Telesummit, Nurses on the Edge of Evolution. And I am so happy to introduce you to LeAnn. She's a master of developing cultures of caring. And over the last 4 decades, she has been in the trenches with nursing, and for the last 22 years, helping hospitals and organizations really work with their retain and recruit their health caregivers. So she has been really involved in how we can deliver better patient care. And she has worked with hospitals all over the country to make this difference. And one of the things she talks about is how we can bring joy back into the workplace. She also has personal stories that she has shared all over the world. And she is one of the best-selling authors of Chicken Soup for the Nurse's Soul series, and also Chicken Soup for the Caregiver's Soul series. So I am so honored that you're here. You're like a celebrity among us. And I also just wanted to, with your visionary and your experience and your travels and everything that you've done, you know, I'm so excited that you're here to tell us what your vision would be for the future of healthcare in the next decade ahead. How can we as nurses seize the day and go forward, and how we can make a difference in healthcare?
I think one of the most transformational things, we need to do is to make self-care a part of the culture.
Yes.
It's no longer considered a self-skill, just a soft skill. It's actually been proven that it impacts patient safety, outcomes, quality of care. And until we make that a priority, we're not going to have a workforce that is resilient enough to continue to serve in the way that they're trained to do and the way that they've been called to do. We've heard lots of statistics about nurse burnout and lack of resiliency. And there are well-being programs in many hospitals, but very few actually nurture the mind, body, and spirit of the caregiver. And if we're going to deliver holistic care, I think we cannot give from an empty well. So it's going to be critical that we make it a part of the culture and a part of the onboarding and a part of the daily care of our staff as well as our patients.
Oh, definitely. So tell me some of the things that you see. I know you have a program. Tell me some of the things that you share to be able to reach out to nurses right now who are watching on this Zoom call right now. What are some things that they can take into their practice to make a difference and change what they're doing today, and how that can help them prepare and create the future for themselves?
Well, I think visionary nurses need to actually practice their own self-care. Very often we are so busy caring for everybody else and those that we are leading that we neglect to take care of ourselves. And it's true, I have developed a year-long program called Self-Care for Healthcare. We spend 1 month on each of the tools, on caring for the body with exercise, of course, and diet and
Right.
getting adequate sleep, because we are indeed a sleep-deprived profession.
Right.
And then to give them tools also to care for their mind with deep breathing and positive thinking and laughter. And one of the most ones that I hear the most reaction to is forgiveness.
Oh, really?
And then to care also for their spirits. And this is the
Yeah.
part that I think people often forget, that
Yeah.
we are spiritual beings. And I think actually working in healthcare for many is a spiritual calling. That doesn't mean religious, but some spirit within them is calling them to be of that service. So leaders need to actually practice this themselves. When they invest in this program, I watch them putting it out for all of their staff. And then I ask them, have you read the book and watched the monthly videos? And did you read the Monday morning motivations and listen to the podcast Seed Sponge? And they admit that they are delivering it, but not always practicing it.
Wow.
And I always say we are always role modeling, whether we want to be or not. And all of the people and all of the staff and the nurses And every caregiver is looking, and everyone in the C-suite is looking to that nurse leader.
Exactly.
To show that self-care.
So when you've worked all over the country, and you've worked with hospitals and changing those cultures of caring. So you really have a program that you're able to offer people so they can begin to practice those skills, begin to focus on themselves, begin to have a strong body, strong mind, and also actualize their own spiritual path and how they can respond to nursing as a calling.
That's exactly right. I was giving my keynote and sharing stories from Chicken Soup for the Nurse's Soul, and then from my own story of helping to rescue babies out of Vietnam at the end of the war. And I wrote a book then called Balancing Life in Your War Zones, and never guessing the world would care. And nursing organizations just began calling and scheduling me to give keynotes. And then they wanted more than an hour. So I was doing full-day workshops.
Right.
And then it was the nurse leaders who said, we need something turnkey, something transformational, something that will be a culture for us. And they began buying the Balancing Life book for all of their nurses and still wanted more. So,
wow.
So that's when I went to the year-long program. And in doing so, what I did was I went to the smartest people I know, which was nurse leaders. Wanted to make sure I understood the pain. And then I went with experts on how adults learn and worked intensely with them for 2 years to find out what programs I can offer that will shift thinking as well as behaviors. And since it takes 21 days to change a habit, we spend 1 month on each of those things. And they read from the book. Now it's all on an app, so they can read it there or listen to the podcast.
Right.
There are questions at the end of every chapter, so they can self-reflect and actually write either in longhand or even on their device,
Right.
their response to it on how the application to their own life.
That is fantastic. So what I'm hearing you say, when we look at the future, what we're going to have to do is how can we take care of ourselves as human beings first? How we really are able to respond to this calling and respond to valuing ourselves and changing our mindset so it changes our behaviors so we can be more present and be more there for patients and families and the demands of whatever it is we do in our practice or in our lives as nurses.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And now there's scientific evidence to prove that the nurse being the patient deliverer's well-being really does have direct input on the patient care, safety, and outcomes. And I think we've always known that.
Right.
I'm certainly a caregiver who is depleted physically, exhausted
Right.
mentally or spiritually, cannot be as present to deliver the type of care that they really are wanting and drawn to give.
So tell me right now, I hope so many people are listening to you right now as we move into the future. And you're an inspirational speaker, and you're calling from in this moment, from your heart and from your wisdom. What is it that someone can take from this moment forward into the future for how they can actually do this? What are some specific things they could start with today?
Well, boy, I got a lot to say about that. Actually, to pay attention, we think we're caring for our bodies, but I encourage people to get even 15 minutes of
Right.
exercise every day, walking meetings or taking the stairs as we always hear, and pay attention. There's so much we can't control in our lives, but what we can control is what we put in our mouths, and to eat regularly and the quality and quantity of foods that our body really needs. And maybe the biggest one is to get sleep. We found that the research shows that the average 12-hour shift worker gets 5 hours of sleep a night. And yet science has proven the human body requires 7 to 8 hours of sleep, or we're depleting our immune systems and raising our blood pressures and chances of depression. And we schedule everything else in our lives.
Wow.
We have to schedule the sleep. And I often say we set an alarm to get up in the morning. I
Yeah.
suggest we set an alarm to go to bed at night.
That's true.
Right. And it's easy just to remember. It really is. One of the best stress reducing tools ever, and proven so, is breathing. And just to stop 3 or 4 times a day and do that slow, deep, easy, rhythmic breathing, like Dr. Watson teaches, and that
Mhm.
we learn in yoga and childbirth. That
Mhm.
slow rhythmic breathing reduces a lot of stress and tension, and really brings us into a place of peace. And I love the idea of, before you enter every patient's room, to touch the door frame and take one or two deep breaths, just to be present to that patient at that moment before you deliver that care.
That's powerful. That is really powerful, because it's amazing how these simple things we do, and they can change our whole feeling in ourselves and our presentation and our presence with everybody we meet in our lives.
That's right. I love it when people tell me that they've implemented self-care for healthcare with their whole family.
Yeah.
We read it together or listen to it together, and it's applicable to every area of our lives, and every profession. I have self-care for healthcare, but now I'm rewriting it to be just self-care for the general public as well.
Oh,
Because
yes.
these are just non-disputable universal truths.
And nursing being one of the most trusted professions, it's so wonderful to see how you've stepped forward as a nurse to become a speaker, to give this message to the world. I feel like you're taking who you are and what you're doing out to the public as like a speaker, as someone who is a nurse who's bringing it to the people all over the world, and you're transcending the traditional role of being a nurse to a public role of being a nurse. And tell me how you came to that, how you found yourself in this position. And this is what I think more and more nurses can do, exactly what it is you're doing, reaching out to the public in creative ways.
Absolutely. I had no desire to be a speaker. Until I wrote my own book about being a part of Operation Baby Lift, called This Must Be My Brother. I was on a national nursing board at the time.
Right,
And those nurses asked for me to come and present at their conference. I said,
right.
about what? I'm not a speaker. They said, lessons you learned from Operation Baby Lift. And that's when I knew immediately. That was 23 years ago. And to this day, I speak on, we have to be strong of mind, body, and spirit to cope in the war zones of our everyday lives. And we have those personally and professionally. So I wrote the presentation and began to give it, and the nurses were just starving for it.
Yeah.
And I spoke at many national conferences, and then hospitals began asking me to do this presentation for a recruitment event. And it's very interesting. To this day, when I do a recruitment event, the average is 30% of the people sign on, because we
Wow.
have a whole generation now that are used to being cared for more. And I joke that, but it's the truth, we have another generation like mine with bad hips and replaced knees, and we need self-care now. So,
Exactly.
so it just grew and grew and grew from that. And then, as I said, they wanted more than a speech. They wanted a year-long turnkey program. And actually now I've written year 2 and year 3. Hospitals are renewing. They found they do have a 14% increase in retention, 16% decrease in sick days, 20% increase in engagement. But we always knew, didn't we, that
Of
if you really
course.
care for the caregiver, you can deliver the best care to the patient.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And tell me what you see, like, as I think what you're doing in the present is so important. So how do you project this work into the future, that every hospital does a program like this? What are ways that we can seize this time in our lives and create what is essential for our professional development as nurses, as who we are? What is your vision of what the future holds for us and for healthcare?
That every hospital would have a caregiver program for the clinicians, for those who are delivering the care, and to have it be more holistic. I
Right,
work with, I'm very fortunate, thousands and thousands of nurses in lots of hospitals, and very
right,
often they have a wellness program, and it includes stress reduction, which is key, and caring for your body more with reducing our cholesterol levels and that type of thing.
right.
But to actually make it a part of the culture, to make it a part of your vision statement, a part of your mission statement, a part of your action daily, I have talking points for managers so that every huddle, they begin with addressing and working with and supporting themselves and their staff together in implementing that month's self-care tool. So my vision is, I say with self-care for healthcare, I'm going to start small and just reach 1 million nurses. I want to reach all 3 million nurses in the country. And with my program or another program, so that nurses know they are cared for and given tools, not just lip service, but actual tools.
Right.
And it will be a culture shift for many hospitals. And often it's just an augmentation of the culture they already have in place. But to have a turnkey program ready to go, I think, is what's been so helpful to them. It's hard to have another staff member that's already overworked develop another wellness program. So
that's
I really
fantastic.
encourage them to make it a part of transforming their cultures.
So your vision is to reach 1 million nurses and 3 million nurses, to make this mindset that we change the culture of nursing to where it begins with ourselves, where we begin to practice holistic self-care, where we can really create what it is we need, starting with ourselves as the vehicles, as a transformational experience for ourselves, so we can be present with patients and do what we do.
That's it, exactly.
I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think what you're creating is wonderful. So in this next few minutes, I'm so happy that you're here. Can you have doing something, an experience that we can do for self-care, maybe leading us through a deep breathing exercise or something that you think would be really wonderful for the audience right now that you can share with us?
Absolutely. It only takes a few minutes to do the deep breathing. Though I think we should spend time with laughter as well, and forgiveness and the other tools. But I think the breathing is something we can do anytime, any place. In the bathroom stall is also a really good place, you know, just to center yourself a bit, or before you go into that patient's room. And that is to just begin by taking one deep cleansing breath and releasing it. And then breathing in slowly from your abdomen. In 2, 3, 4, and out 2, 3, 4. And in 2, 3, 4, and out 2, 3, 4. And with each breath, it will get a little deeper, and make sure that each breath, your shoulders are relaxed. And in 2, 3, 4, and out 2, 3, 4. Some people put words with it. I am 2, 3, 4, relax. 2, 3, 4. Or let go, 2, 3, 4. Let God create 2, 3, 4. Or creator or supreme being, whichever speaks to you. Right. But doing that exercise helps your body, your mind, and your spirit.
It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
And it's so easy, and it's something we can do that starts right with ourselves.
I often say it's so easy, we often discount it, right? Yeah. Exactly.
And another thing that you said, I thought that was very, very powerful, is intention. When we create an intention, like when you take a deep breath and walk into a patient's room, for example, or you walk into any situation in life where you bring yourself, the fullness of yourself to that moment. Can you speak to that a little bit more? Because I think that is such a powerful pause, when we pause in our bodies and we create this centeredness, and how it is we experience ourselves as loving, compassionate, and caring human beings.
The breathing, as you mentioned, is a really great way to start that. Just to be, as you said, just to be present. And I close my eyes to do that, just because it doesn't allow me to be distracted by all the other things going on, all that white noise in the world. Then the second part of that, with your intention, is my second mental balance tool, which is positive thinking. Oh. And when you make your own positive affirmations, and in my books I have a list of suggestions to begin with, that I am centered, I am whole, I am healthy, I am competent, I love my body. Repeating those things, and I am going to deliver the best care. repeating the positive things over and over in your mind, and
Wow.
making your own positive list of positive intentions and reviewing them. Initially, I have put sticky notes all over so I can see them as I remember, but then they'll be in your mind, so that in those moments, you go back to your positive thinking, those affirmations that make you centered, that make you whole, that make you happy. Because as you mentioned at the beginning, this is how we bring joy to the workplace. Not just with my laughter tool, but when we are whole, physically, mentally, and spiritually, the best version of ourselves, that's when we bring that joy to the workplace and to all those that we serve with. And that can transform a culture as well.
That's so true. So what I hear you saying is when we step into the future, we're stepping into the future as whole human beings in our role as being a nurse. We are transforming ourselves to a place where we experience happiness, positive, and joy, to where we find resilience and strength and a sound of mind that we take forward in our lives. And it's not just part of our nursing practice, but it's who we are as whole human beings.
Well stated. I'm going to write that down and putting on all my material, because it's exactly the synopsis of my life's work and what I want to bring to the world and what I want the world to appreciate, that I want the nurses and healthcare givers to feel and experience and make it a part of their own personal culture.
I think what's about one of the things I've learned about nursing in my travels and speaking is that as nursing, we don't appreciate ourselves enough. We don't appreciate this noble and sacred profession, knowing that we've been called to a work that is so important in the world right now.
That is so true. I always say at the end of my presentations that I do believe working in healthcare is a calling. And it called me 50 years ago, and it called my mentors 50 years before that. And I think it's a calling to minister to people in their toughest times. Yeah. That's why we don't quit. That's why we don't work someplace else. That's for more money or whatever, because this is our calling. And I remind them that I know there are days that you think, I'm just one little person here, and the need is so great. I can't get it all done. I can't take all the pain away. I can't make everything better. I can't make anybody happy. And on those days, you need to remember that everything you do as a nurse makes a difference. There was a sign above a burn unit in Vietnam where an American plastic surgeon had set up a clinic to help the children that had been burned and disfigured by the war.
Yeah.
And above the doorway, he wrote, "It's better to light a single candle than to curse the darkness." And that's what nurses and healthcare givers do every single day. They light their candles. And by doing so, they're inspiring everybody around them, their coworkers, patients, their families, to inspire them. So I often say that they just don't set their hospital aglow, they set the world aglow with their goodness and their caring.
Wow, that's beautiful. So they set the whole world aglow when they do their work, wherever it is they are.
That's right.
Wow.
And sometimes we get thank you notes.
Yeah.
And that makes us know the difference that we've made. Mm-hmm. But we have to know that even though we don't get those in writing, there are millions of people out there that have been impacted by our care. And never to forget that candle that you lit. You may not see it, but it's there, and you're making a difference. Sometimes people say that I was a hero to be a part of Operation Baby Lift, which I got into quite accidentally. But I remind all health caregivers that I wasn't a hero so much, but they are the heroes every single day.
I remember how there are so many precious moments in being a nurse where you're just in that moment alone with another human being. And you know, just by your connection with them, that moment is the most precious moment in the world. And I always was so amazed at the ability to be there. Like I thought, wow, we find ourselves in these most intimate situations, the way you found yourself, you know, in the situation of saving those babies. You found it, and then you rose to the occasion to where, in a way, you became a light for everything that came in that moment and all the moments later.
And that's what nurses do every day. You know, that human touch. And we often say it is so busy now. It's so hard to work in healthcare.
Right.
And we have so much technology, and we never want to have it high tech and low touch.
Right.
So I remind every nurse that just that patient touching their hand and holding their hand, and then making that eye contact, even if it's for 10 seconds, to look into their eyes,
right,
and hold their hand and say, I'm here for you, and we're going to have a great day. And how can I serve you best today? And when people tell me they don't really have time for that kind of intimacy and that kind of connection to patients, I remind them that just took 60 seconds.
yeah.
And it can transform the care and the outcome for the patient, for sure.
And I think the work that you're bringing to the world, where we start with ourselves, we begin to value how important that is in our lives. And it just changes the way we think.
Right.
It changes what we think about ourselves and each other, and how we can make a difference. When we truly care for ourselves, we know that the most important thing we bring to that moment with that patient is, I'm going to take care of you. I'm here for you.
Right. And that trust, I think that's a key word, that trust that we can develop with our patients, and as leaders that we need to be able to establish with those that we lead as well. And I often say that I think we trust people who take care of us. That's why we trust our mamas and daddies. They take care of us, and they're going to trust leaders who take care of them and don't just talk the talk, but actually walk the talk and implement these cultures of caring.
Well, I want to appreciate you for stepping out of the traditional nursing role and being able to be a speaker in the world, and writing the books, Chicken Soup for the Soul, that reach out to people to honor the profession of nursing, to reflect on the profession of nursing, and to be, in a way, a spokesperson that you have, you know, what you're doing as a nurse are new ways of where nurses can have impact in our society and culture. You know, there's nurses taking care of patients at the bedside, but then there's someone just like you who is a voice that reaches more and more people. And I just want to appreciate you for stepping into that role and doing that for so many people, and being an inspiration, and being a nurse who does speak to just the basics of healthcare. What does it mean to take care of yourself? And your role as a nurse, I think, is it's my vision of the future for other nurses, to step into and follow your leadership, the path that you've created for us.
Well, thank you. You blessed me for saying so. Thank you. And I will remind them I had no intention of being a speaker, but that too was a calling.
Yeah.
And one of my spiritual tools is to listen to that deep inner voice. And you can call it spirit or creator or higher conscience, whatever speaks to you. But that's what directs you. That's where you find your calling. So perhaps people listening to this session will listen and find yet another calling as well.
So tell us about your free gift.
Oh, well, I thank you. I had an article published in Nurse Leader magazine last year on self-care for healthcare, and it outlines exactly everything I just spoke about, and gives you the research as well, that how caring for your mind, body, and spirit actually will transform yourself, your personal culture, your environmental culture, and get a culture of caring in your workplace as well. So that's available as a free gift to everyone.
Thank you so much.
My joy.
All right, my joy to you. I really, really appreciate you deeply.
Thank you, as I do you, and all the nurses who are listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.